Have you ever noticed something? When you were young, people always asked if you're dating. But now, some people can't wait to find someone. Some people have never even been married. Some have been divorced. Some have been widowed. And some have sworn they'll never do it again. But no matter how you got here, there comes a point where you start asking yourself a question that you probably never thought you'd ask. Is another relationship really worth the risk? And I've been thinking a lot about that lately. And it's not because I'm bitter or because I think love is dead. And it's definitely not because I believe that there aren't incredible women out there. I've met enough good ones in my life to know that they exist. But my question is different. How do you know who's genuine before you gamble the life you've spent years building? A while back, I made a video about modern dating and my experiences with it. And I'll put that video on the end screen because it's really the first half of this conversation. But as I'm recording this, almost 290,000 people have watched that video. And that surprises me. But what surprised me even more were the comments. Thousands of people saying that they were asking the same questions. And that's when I realized something. Back then, I wasn't asking whether modern dating had become so fake that it wasn't worth trying. You know, and today I'm asking a much harder question. How do you know who's real? I've watched hundreds of conversations online about dating. Men blaming women, women blaming men, people saying marriage is dead, people saying walk away, people saying never settle. And honestly, there's good points on both sides. But I think almost everybody is missing the biggest problem. The biggest problem isn't men. The biggest problem isn't women. The biggest problem is there are a lot of people pretending to be somebody they're not. They're fake ass people and they're all around us. Now, that's not everyone, but it's enough to make you question everything. But here's what actually wore me out. It wasn't going on dates, it wasn't meeting new people. It was feeling like I was the only one trying to do it honestly. I wasn't looking to rush right into another relationship. I wasn't looking for someone to fix my life. I wasn't really looking to try to impress somebody with things that weren't true. And I genuinely wanted to take things slow. Sit down, talk, laugh, and learn who the person sitting across from me really was. See if we actually enjoyed each other's company, because if not, why go any further? Let things happen naturally. But it often felt like the other person wasn't approaching it the same way. Sometimes it felt rushed. Sometimes it felt like they already had some relationship planned out in their head before they even knew who I was. A Cinderella story, I guess. And then there were the games. Honestly, I thought we left that stuff behind us 30 plus years ago. One day you're talking to someone all day. The next day they disappear. Then they come back like nothing happened. You start wondering, did I say something wrong? Should I text? Should I wait? Should I pretend like I'm less interested in them than I really am? I remember catching myself thinking, what? Wait, what are we doing? We're grown ass adults. Why does this feel like middle school drama chaos in games? Then another thought hit me. Maybe the games aren't even the real problem. Maybe they're just a symptom. Because while I'm honestly trying to figure out who this person is, I have no idea why they're even interested in me. Do they genuinely like me? Are they lonely? Are they looking for someone to rescue them? Do they need financial security? Are they looking for attention? Do they just not want to be alone? Or are they exactly who they appear to be? But here's the problem. I can't tell. At least not in the beginning, and neither can anybody else. And that's the part that I don't hear enough people talking about. Manipulative people don't introduce themselves that way at all. Users don't tell you they're users. People with hidden agendas don't announce them over dinner. Everybody looks pretty good in the beginning. And that's why the beginning is so easy. The hard part comes later. When life gets stressful, or when money becomes an issue, when somebody doesn't get their way, that's when masks usually start falling off. Unfortunately, by then you're already invested. You know, I've shared enough of my story on this channel that I don't need to tell it all over again. All of that is here. It's already here. You know, I've had to rebuild my life, and I'm still rebuilding it. I've still got a long way to go. But compared to where I was, I actually enjoy my life again. I enjoy getting up in the morning. I enjoy going fishing by myself. I enjoy sitting around talking with people over breakfast. I enjoy driving somewhere with no real destination. But mostly, I enjoy the peace that slowly came back into my life after handing it away to the wrong person before, who I fell for their mask. And that didn't happen by accident. None of it. It took years, years of rebuilding, years of figuring out who I was again, years of learning to enjoy my own company. So when somebody says, Ron, you just got to take a chance, I stop and think, take a chance with what? You know, when I was 25, a bad relationship probably just meant a broken heart. At 55, a bad relationship can derail years of progress. Years. That's a completely different gamble. I don't know. I'm not much of a gambler. So I'm not just risking another date. I'm risking the peace I've spent years trying to get back. Now, before somebody misunderstands me, I'm not saying don't date. I'm not saying don't fall in love. I'm not saying there aren't amazing women out there. And I'm not saying there's not success stories. I absolutely believe there are. What I'm questioning is whether we really know who somebody is before, we've already invested our emotions. Because if I can't answer that question, how do I make an intelligent decision? How do I know the person sitting across from me is being just as honest as I am? How do I know they're not simply showing me the version they think I'll fall for? I don't know. And that's what I've been wrestling with. People ask me all the time, are you ever going to date again? Maybe. I honestly don't know. But here's what has changed. Years ago, another relationship would have been competing with loneliness. Today, it has to compete with a life I finally don't want to escape from. That's different because peace has become something incredibly valuable to me. Not because somebody gave it to me, they didn't, because I earned it through mistakes, through heartbreak, through starting over, through rebuilding, all of it. So if somebody ever becomes part of my life again, she has to add to that. Not complicate it, not fill a void, not rescue me, actually add to it. Because after everything I've been through, I'm no longer asking whether I can find someone. I'm asking whether I can honestly know who's genuine before I risk everything I've spent years getting back from somebody else who was fake. And if you figured that one out, I genuinely just love to hear your thoughts. Put them in the comments. But if you haven't seen that first video that I mentioned above that started this whole conversation, it'll be right here on the end screen. I'll put it on this side. and I'll see you guys over there. Thank you.